Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. And if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do for a living.
Oh, for sure. Thanks for having me, Dan. My name is Ulysses Youngblood. I live in Worcester, Massachusetts. That is also where my business is. Major Bloom is in Worcester, downtown Worcester. And it is a cannabis establishment. We do marijuana manufacturing. We distribute to other retailers. We have a retail dispensary as well, and then we do home delivery around the city of Worcester. So we're vertically integrated cannabis establishment.
Awesome. So how did you get the idea to start this business?
For sure, man. So I think the idea, I believe in synchronicity a lot. So being a kid of cannabis culture, I was introduced to cannabis around the age of like 14 or 15 by my older sisters and older cousin. And then about 3 to 4 years later, I ended up getting kicked out of college for cannabis related, marijuana related activities. And then a year later, it decriminalized in Massachusetts. And that was around 07, 08. And ever since then, I've kind of had my eyes on the industry as it becomes more commercialized. So really the idea, started with me just being involved with the cannabis culture, but then going to study business in undergraduate and graduate school, and then simultaneously with cannabis becoming more legalized, I'm like, I think this could be a business that I can see myself pursuing. So
Awesome. So in terms of your business, right, I know that you're shipping cannabis, but is it just like local deliveries, or are you able to ship across the state? Like, what does that look like for you?
For sure, man. So it's illegal to ship across state lines. So
Right.
no licensed cannabis establishment anywhere in any state should be doing that. So we do local deliveries in our city. And then, like I mentioned, we redistribute to other dispensaries across the state of the Commonwealth.
So what is the biggest challenge you're facing in your business today?
Probably, to be honest with you, is regulations, man. Currently, as we speak right now, there is a CCC meeting, so that's the Cannabis Control Commission, and they are changing the regulations for home delivery. Now, home delivery is specifically for equity businesses. My business, I qualify for the equity program here in Massachusetts, and the equity programs are basically across the nation are designed to help reverse the harms of prohibition, more or less for people who have been arrested or people of color or disenfranchised communities. So they came up with this license type that is home delivery, and it has a strong hindrance on basically being able to flourish. And one of those hindrances is 2 people in the car. So today, if not right now, they're deliberating on whether or not they want to remove that one driver so that it's only required to have one driver in the car. So to answer your question, I think the biggest challenge is definitely that specific regulations, but other regulations as well.
Awesome. So how do you go about marketing yourself? Obviously, it's a very competitive space. I feel like, so many people are trying to take advantage of this becoming legal now. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I think marketing, it comes natural, if you will, because as I mentioned, I just love cannabis as a kid. So I love to bring in that nostalgic factor of cannabis culture, whereas a lot of cannabis establishments, a lot of big money players, they look at cannabis as a commodity, which it is, but they like to remove the history of it. So I think one of the big things that Major Bloom does is we really connect to the culture of cannabis, but then also our local community for sure.
So do you think it's because more of, as you mentioned, that you're not one of these corporate conglomerates and that you actually understand the business more and you understand your customers because you are a customer, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, for sure. It's definitely being a part of the culture prior to legalization is a huge part of, our brand for sure.
Awesome. So in terms of your business now, right? So you mentioned that you can do local deliveries, but I guess I was getting, obviously you can't go, outside of the state, but I'm saying it's like how far, because I know like Massachusetts, I mean, do you go like outside of Worcester? Is it just like local? Like how far do you guys go to actually make deliveries?
Yeah. So it is a business decision strategically. If you're familiar with Worcester, Worcester is the second largest city in New England next to Boston. So there are enough weed smokers in the city for us not to have to leave. For a while, we were doing a 30-mile radius. And because of that 2 driver rule, we pay a really higher than usual rate, almost $20 an hour. So you can imagine if we're making a delivery that's 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, then that's 2 people in the car. You're doubling your overhead, your labor cost, to make it the delivery for $120. So after a while, we just did some economic considering the economic factors and realized that it made sense to really just focus on our local community.
Right. So I guess like back to growth, right? So you're talking about like, this like a strategy that you're in the community, but in terms of marketing, it's like what does work for you? Like do you guys run ads on Facebook or like what have you done to get in front of people?
Yeah, for sure. So we have run ads on Facebook, and we've run ads on Instagram, and unfortunately, our ad account got disabled. But in good news, we actually just got it reinstated, and we took a different approach when it comes to running ads. Now, anything cannabis related won't fly. So right now, as of yesterday, we had an ad running for actually a hoodie that we created, a Major Bloom branded hoodie. So that giveaway, basically campaign that was posted on Instagram is now being able to be boosted and advertised to our local community. Because if you know Major Bloom and you see it as an ad, then you can resonate and say, hey, I possibly want that apparel or a free t-shirt or whatever it may be. So the strategy has changed a bit to really assimilate to the brand and not necessarily the product itself. And then I think coexisting with that is the work that we do in the community. We had a massive success running a food drive for Thanksgiving, and we basically donated the proceeds to a local school that's in a disenfranchised community and a local nonprofit that's in a disenfranchised community. We're doing the same thing with the toy drive, and we've seen a lot of engagement with our customers. And for those customers that have been engaged with the campaign and donating food and donating toys, we're able to basically, offer them an exclusive menu item, and people like that.
Awesome. So essentially like your strategy has been like I guess like even more recent strategy, obviously having these events, but when it comes to running ads, you're focused on like running ads like on the products and building this brand recognition. So somebody will say, okay, like when they're thinking about purchasing the actual cannabis, then they'll also buy that while you're, promoting something else. It's kind of like a subliminal message of your actual core products.
Right, right. And that's the important part is that for us, and you mentioned the saturation, like cannabis is a commodity, whether it's another dispensary, whether it's a street dealer, people can get their hands on cannabis. So you have to think outside of the product itself and you have to tell a story. I mean, just like we're on this podcast now, we've been running a radio show for 2 years that's locally aired, and then we dub it into a podcast as well. And we get a lot of listeners that listen through our radio ads, and they're like, oh, I heard you on the radio. And they're just like, oh, that's the dispensary. So it's doing things differently than other alternative solutions has really worked for us. And we want to keep it going, man. Content's important.
For sure. So obviously now people are looking for the best use case for AI for their business. So do you guys use AI? And if not, like how could AI help your business?
Oh, for sure, man. Personally, I've been using ChatGPT for the past, I don't know, 6 or 8 months now at this point. We also use a tool, I think it's called Miss and Letter. We just started a few weeks ago, which helps with our social media distribution. And there are other things like, image AI imaging that we're just learning more about. So I'm excited from a personal perspective, especially as someone who writes a lot, using AI tools. I've used Grammarly for, man, ever since I started this business to help with me writing emails, and that's converted into blog posts and so on and so forth. So I think it's definitely a huge opportunity to integrate AI. I will say that it's kind of similar in some regards where, if you go overly with the use of cannabis, then they will slow it down and talk about federal and things like that, almost the same way with the ads. But there's workarounds and ways that you can work within it, essentially. And we're still learning more about it. We're just students, for sure.
So do you feel like AI could help you, for example, like in a conversational way, like if somebody's reaching out to you and if they have questions about your products, like chatting on, it's like on your website, for example?
Yeah, I actually had visions about that before I even realized AI was a thing, and most of it came actually from my I guess unregulated or cultural experiences with cannabis, where if someone's looking for a particular product, then they're gonna reach out to you and in a certain way that, if you sell weed from a street perspective, people ask the same kind of questions. So I think that we will ultimately integrate chats into our website, and we've definitely done it on my Google business page with the frequently asked questions and things of that nature. So I agree with it 100%.
So, like, obviously now, like, we're about to wrap up 2023. So for 24, like, what are your goals in terms of revenue? Like, where do you want to scale to from where you're at now?
That's a great question. In terms of revenue, so we had a solid year. We've been growing year over year, which is great. I think in terms of revenue, I mean, if I were to put a number on it, I would probably say 20 to 30% increase of what we've done this past year would be great. But I would say more important than that is taking control of our expenses. Cannabis regulations and cannabis licensed businesses pay a lot in taxes, and you really got to have your books in order to basically not pay as much as to the man. But in order to get to that goal, I think it's going to be important to double down on our efforts for the local community, but I think also putting an effort into what we can do outside of our local community and what we can do outside of basically the state. And I'll give you a great example is that there's a research license that is not that sought after in the state. There's probably about 3 or 4 operators out of maybe like 600 licensed businesses in the state of Massachusetts. We are slated to be, definitely in the top 10. It's not a huge revenue driver here locally, but on a national level, it definitely will be for sure.
So in terms of like even expansion, like are you looking at potentially maybe not next year, but even like in the future, opening up locations in different states or even selling your merchandise in different states? Like what does that look like, like in the pipeline for you?
Funny you asked that question. I just completed the application for a micro business in New York. Maybe, I don't know, maybe like what's today? Thursday. I think I finished it Monday night or Tuesday night. So New York is definitely in my heart because I'm from Southern Connecticut. I'm massive influenced by New York and New York City. And then I actually put in an application for Connecticut, I think last year. It's a different system. They have a lottery system, so we weren't selected, but they are probably going to open up their licensing, I think early Q1 of 2024. So we'll put in a license there. And I don't see us moving to another state unless we are vertically integrated in the same capacity which we are here in Massachusetts. It just doesn't make sense. So that's why I really like the micro license in New York because we can be vertically integrated the same way we are here.
So can you explain kind of like what a micro license is and like this vertical integration? Because I think that many people don't understand what that means.
For sure, man. And I could tell you, as someone who studied business, undergraduate and graduate school, I learned a lot about vertical integration actually through some of my favorite artists like Jay-Z. Jay-Z talks about vertical integration a lot in his music. Nipsey Hussle, I don't know if you know who Nipsey Hussle is. He preached it a lot in his music. Rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle. So basically, it's the opportunity to, at least in cannabis, manufacture the goods, distribute the goods, and then sell them to consumers or deliver them to consumers. In many cases, vertical integration for cannabis also includes the cultivation, so the growing of cannabis. We don't cultivate, we take raw materials, then we create finished goods, we create our brand, we create unique products for specific customers, and then we're able to sell those to other retailers and then sell them in our own retail establishment. So in many cases, vertical integration is really taking, whether it be raw material or if you can think about any kind of product or service, creating that service and having control of the customer journey as well.
So essentially, just I mean, for like like a simpler term, like you would essentially be opening up like a second or third location, or in these other states to kind of not moving your company, but essentially like being able to do the same thing that you're doing in Massachusetts and do it in New York or Connecticut, right?
Yes, that is exactly it, man. There's so many reasons why. I mean, for tax purposes, for branding purposes, for control of the supply chain. And a lot of people don't think that way. They just think dispensaries, dispensaries, dispensary. But the supply chain is crazy. Every state regulation is different. So you have to have some level of control from a manufacturing and creative perspective.
So do you guys like keep an eye on, like, for example, across different states, like as they're changing their laws, like as they're making it like more legal? Like obviously you're in the Northeast now, but as I mentioned earlier, so like I'm in Texas, right? So do you think that even expanding further west is like it's like in your future?
That is something that I've always thought about, but not from a positive perspective, to be real. The wild, wild west, meaning like your Colorados, your Washingtons, New Mexico, California. Those markets are crazy, man. Not to say that we wouldn't ever enter those markets, but right now, and the way that we were funded, very grassroots, very gritty. I don't see us doing that probably within the next 2 or 3 years, unless some kind of crazy, outstanding opportunity arise. I think it's more important to get rooted in this region first, and then possibly move west. But for now, it's definitely moving south. So, like I said, Connecticut, New York, possibly even the DMV area, Florida. But yeah, I would say, New York, Connecticut is definitely going to happen at some point in the future, near future.
Sounds great. So what would you say is like the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew before you started this business?
Hmm. Man, it's funny because when people ask about advice, I give a disclaimer and say I don't give advice. I give experience. I give experience. My life drastically changed when I opened up this business, man. I worked on it, moonlighted for a long time, had visions on it for a long time. And a lot of my family and friends and people close to me didn't really see it. Not to say that it discouraged me, but they didn't really see the hard work that it took. And it wasn't until I actually had a piece of paper, a license from the state in a brick and mortar facility that was empty. And I had to raise $1.5 million and be like, all right, I need to get this place built out. And then people started watching and paying more attention, but mind you, there was a 3 to 3.5, 4 year process to get there. And then people started paying attention once we got a building and a license. And then we got open. So once we got open, people looked at me differently. Like, yes, we've made a couple $1,000,000, you know what I mean? But the expenses are high. So I think the experience I can give is to stay grounded, man. Like, I have things that keep me grounded, man. Like, I taught in a local college just to stay grounded. I have 2 young kids that I coach all their sports teams. I've never missed a practice, never missed a game. I volunteer a lot. I'm on the board of our charter school here. So I like to do things that are rooted in the community, and not be so hard pressed on like, hey, I run a cannabis business. And believe me, there are not many Black entrepreneurs in the space. In fact, the numbers are dwindling, and that really hits home. So I have to do things to stay grounded. And that's probably my biggest advice I can give to people is figure out what's going to make you stay grounded, because it's a crazy industry, man. It's definitely a crazy industry.
That's awesome. So if we're going to have this conversation again in 1 year from now, where do you see things going for your business?
1 year from now, let's see, that'd be 2024, December 2024. I have no doubt that we'd be progressing into a different state, whether it be Connecticut or Massachusetts. I'm probably most excited about the research license. We do have about 3,000 square feet in our basement that needs to be built out to expand to more production and research space or facility. And then I would probably say more content as well. Those are probably the three to four biggest things that I would say that we're going to progress is whether it be through our radio show, whether it be through more internet shows. We're definitely just going to produce more content, and it's probably going to come by way of AI, to be honest with you. So
That's awesome. And we're rooting for you. So if somebody watching this wanted to reach out, do you mind sharing your website or social media, just best ways to get in contact with you?
for sure, for sure. So all our social media platforms are The Major Bloom. Our website is majorbloom.com. And I would definitely recommend, if anyone's riding through Massachusetts, we get a lot of people that come from New York or from New Jersey that are going to New Hampshire or Maine or even maybe Canada or riding through to Boston. A lot of people stop by because we're right off the highway. We're downtown Worcester. But again, most platforms is The Major Bloom, and then our website is majorbloom.com.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Dan. And I hope we get to speak a year from now, man.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, sounds great. Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely, bro.
All right, bye.